In this lesson, I'm going to look at several different properties of the real number system. I want to emphasize from the beginning that these properties are only guaranteed to work with the real numbers. So if we were to move outside the real number system, we could no longer be sure that these properties would actually work. Now, our first group of properties are the commutative properties, which basically say, our commutative property for addition says that A plus B is always equal to B plus A. Now this tells us, for example, that 5 plus 3 is the same thing as 3 plus 5. But actually even more useful than that is to say something like x plus 2 is equal to 2 plus x. You can write that in any order, either order, and it doesn't make any difference. Now our commutative property for multiplication says that A times B equals B times A. So not only can we add in any order, we can multiply in any order when we're working with two real numbers. A convenient use for this would be to say, take like 5 times 13 times 2. Use the commutative property with the 13 and the 2 to turn this into 5 times 2 times 13. This is convenient because the 5 times 2 gives us a 10, and 10 times 13 can be easily done mentally to give us our result of 130. So the property can be used to rearrange addition, to rearrange multiplication, to make those operations a little bit easier. Your associative property deals more with 3 values, 3 real numbers, as opposed to 2. Our associative property for addition says that A plus the quantity B plus C is equal to the quantity A plus B plus C. Now note the difference between the commutative and the associative as to how we tell them apart. With the commutative we only have 2 values and they are swapping the order. With your associative you're dealing with 3 values and you don't have an A plus B becoming a B plus A or anything like that. It's just a matter of a shifting left or right of the grouping symbols. The associative property for multiplication looks a lot like the one for addition. This property says A times the quantity B times C is equal to the quantity A times B then times C. Again, notice the shifting of the parentheses. So if you're trying to tell the two apart, if we had 3 times x times y, and you wanted to use the commutative property, you could turn that into 3 times y times x. But a similar expression, if I had 3 times the quantity x times y, using the associative property, I could shift the parentheses and make that the quantity 3x times y. So two very similar expressions, and those can be rewritten with either of these two properties. Now, one other property that we need to take a look at, a fifth property, is our distributive property. Now, distributive property is not a property just for addition or just for multiplication. It involves both. And the distributive property says that A times the quantity B plus C is equal to A times B plus A times C. And of course the property works just fine with subtraction as well. It can be written A times the quantity B minus C equaling A B minus AC. What this property is an exception to the order of operations. If I had a 3 times a 7 plus 4, order of operations says do the 7 plus 4 first, and that gives me a 3 times an 11, and do the multiplication afterwards, and that will give us our 33. Distributive property says, though, we can do this differently. If we rewrite the problem and distribute, distributive property says do a 3 times a 7, also do a 3 times a 4, allowing the multiplication to come first and the addition to come later. So our multiplications are going to give us a 21 plus a 12, which is also a 33. So we see that it works in this numerical example, but that doesn't really tell us what the point is. Why do we need this property? Because the first way we did it up here really wasn't that difficult. So why do we need this property? Well, the best use of this property is for problems in which the order of operations really can't be followed. For example, if I had a 3 times an x plus 2, order of operations indicates that I should add first. After I get that answer, I should multiply afterwards. But not knowing what x is, I really can't add first. But to simplify this expression, we have to get rid of those grouping symbols some way because it's not considered simplified with them there. So I can distribute the 3 to the x, giving me a 3x. I can distribute the 3 onto the 2. 3 times 2 is 6. It was an addition, so we put the plus in the middle. Now the parentheses are gone, and we haven't done anything to violate the order of operations because the distributive property says we can do this. Now, one major thing to use caution with is your sign numbers. If I had a negative 2 times a quantity y minus 3, as I distribute, I have to be very careful. The negative 2 times y gives me negative 2y. The negative on the 2 and the minus on the 3 are actually going to cancel each other, and we're going to come out with a plus 6 on this example, again because the minus and the minus canceling out and making the plus. So these are the 5 properties of real numbers. Again, remember to use them only with real numbers.